Good evening, everybody. Like my brother Michael said, my name is Angel Baez, and I am married to my wife, Monica Flores. We are both in fellowship in the assembly in the port city of Veracruz, Mexico. And it is a privilege to share my testimony with you this evening. This evening, this was 1997 when I was a high school student that I heard about others from Mexico who had gone to work in the United States. And I had heard that they were doing well. In 2001, I, re- I received a call from my uncle who was living in Florida, encouraged me that he had a new, he had knew a coyote. A coyote is a human trafficker. He will help me cross into the United States, and that this person will contact me at the US border between Sonora, Mexico, and the state of Arizona, USA. This was where the Arizona, Sonora, Mexico is where is a place where many immigrants had to cross into the United States from all over Mexico, including Central and even South America. I agreed with the coyote, and he told me what day I had to leave Veracruz for the border. His call was 2 weeks before I left Veracruz for the US. The day came when I had to leave Veracruz, and it was on September 2001. The day, as many of you remember, when the Twin World Trade Tower in New York collapsed from the terrorist attack. Maybe the Americans say we will never forget, but I can say I will never forget because it was a God plan for me, and I never thought that God had something for me, my soul salvation. It was a time to leave, and my father walking me to the bus terminal. I remember that all the television screen were in focus on what had happened in New York. I didn't realize at the moment when about all the things. I got on the bus and traveled 2 days from Veracruz to the U.S. border with the hope of making money and helping my family, because I had heard of many who had. After 2 days traveling, I arrived where the coyote had told me, and I looked for the owner of the guest house where I was, where I was, where I was to stay. The coyote was in contact with the owner of the guest house, where the guest house is the place where the immigrants frequently come to rest before having to walk the rest of the distance on foot through the desert. At the guest house, I told the owner of the guest house that I had to go meet up with a coyote. The coyote name is Victor Lopez, and that person had to know that I was going to arrive because the coyote had been in contact with telling her that I was coming. I was to wait a room. I was waiting in a room, and there it was. I wait for the coyote, but the coyote never meet me, never came. So the point is that my money was running. I had thought my, I had thought of returning to Veracruz. However, um, there were four other people that had come from a state of Chiapas, Mexico, to the same location where I was. I had made good friends with them, and they encouraged me to not to return not to return to my city. He encouraged me to keep going. That they came when other coyotes came for us than we didn't know. Than didn't know. The coyote was to guide us in the desert, and out, set, we set out walking. After 2 days, after 2.5 days of walking, we were picked up in the middle of the desert in a vehicle to take us to Phoenix, Arizona. It was in Phoenix that we rest in apartment that the coyote used for the immigrants. We reached Phoenix and rested for a short time before going with another coyote who took us to Florida. It took us 3 days traveling from Arizona to Florida in a pickup. By the time we reached Florida, I had completely run out of money. I had to spend what I had between our time in Arizona as well as over our 3 days of travel to Fort Myers, Florida. Florida is where the coyote lives, as where is where uh, I stayed for with an uncle. I stayed in Florida for 2 weeks. Why in Florida, a cousin in Iowa contact me and asking me if I want to come to Iowa with him. He asked me if I want to go to work to Iowa, and I say yes. After 2 weeks in Florida with my uncle, I traveled to the state of Indiana to be with my other relative. After Indiana, I traveled to Iowa, where my cousin was waiting for me, and where I ended up working for 6 years. When I was in Iowa, my mind was always on money. I can't complain because it went well for me, and I was making good money. However, I was on the broad I was on the Broadway, that in my sins, with no thought of God and displacing Him in my life. You know what? I feel embarrassed to remember that. 3 years later, my father came from Mexico to the same town where I live in Iowa, and we lived together. One day, someone invited him to listen the gospel, but he also invited me because he knows that I need the gospel and I changed my life. The invitation was for me that I might be saved and changed. When I began to attend meetings, I did I even pay attention what the preacher said, and my mind was always in other things. Many times I criticized the preacher that they were crazy because how could they possibly know that the heaven and hell exist? That it was in 2005. A year passed, and I went to the gospel hall for myself. And when I did was a Bible reading. It was in Wednesday 7 p.m. in Hampton Gospel Hall, Iowa. When I arrived, when I arrived, they were all very friendly, and that is what impressed me most. But I still didn't understand salvation. The veteran were showing me a good testimony, and that is what every Christian should do today. The moment came when a brother from the assembly told me that he wanted to talk to me, and he and I was waiting. He told me that he was going to come to visit on Tuesday at my apartment at 7 p.m. but he never came. 2 days later, I met him, and I asked him, annoyed and upset, why he hasn't gone by. He told me that he had an enforcement event, and I asked me if we could meet the following Tuesday at the same time in my apartment, and we agreed. The preacher came to my apartment and began to open the Bible and, and explain God's plan of salvation for me that night. But I still didn't understand. Time continued to pass, and it was one Sunday on May 14, 2006. That day, I understood on that on what the Lord Jesus Christ had, that the Lord Jesus Christ that had died for me on the cross of Calvary. I understood through John 3:16. I think that anybody in this room know John 3:16 that say, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but everlasting life." Now I know that my destiny is a heaven, for the work of the Lord Jesus Christ accomplished on the cross on my behalf. When I look back, I can see how the Lord preserved me in the desert, because, or maybe you know, that many people have died trying to cross the desert for a better life in the US. I remember how the Lord kept me when I was a unbeliever, and what would have happened if I died in my sins. I would not be, I would not have been here, and I and I would have be lost forever. Thanks God that He saved me for the Lord Jesus Christ. This is my testimony, and I believe that for anyone that who has been saved, this is the most wonderful time in a person's life. Maybe each one there, they have a beautiful and different testimony, like my brother Manuel say. But if nobody is still safe now, don't waste your life. Maybe many times you have heard the gospel and you are not safe. The time is running out. Don't waste your time. Remember 2 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 2. This is my testimony. Thank you very much.